one eye, a monstrous size, and a hunger for human flesh. This is the image we all have of the Cyclops, thanks to the harrowing tale of Odysseus and the unfortunate sailors he lost. We see them as brutish, cannibalistic shepherds, a primitive and savage race living at the edge of the civilized world. But what if this image, this entire profile, is just one chapter in a much longer and more tragic story? What if the Cyclops that Odysseus faced was merely the degraded descendant of a far older, far more powerful, and even divine lineage? Today, we are not just investigating a monster. We are investigating the secret history of an entire race, from their primordial birth as god-tier blacksmiths who armed Zeus himself, to their fall from grace into a tribe of lawless savages. This is the story of the three forgotten tribes of the Cyclopes. Our story begins not in a shepherd's cave, but at the dawn of creation. The first Cyclopes were not monsters. They were primordial gods. They were the three sons of Uranus, the sky, and Gaia, the earth. Their names were Brontes, thunder, Sterops, lightning, and Argus, flash. They were giants of immense power, but their true gift was their unparalleled skill as blacksmiths. Their father, the paranoid Uranus, feared their power and imprisoned them deep within the earth in Tartarus. They remained there for eons, even after Cronus overthrew Uranus. It was only when Zeus began his great war against the Titans, the Titanomachy, that he remembered the legendary smiths. He descended into Tartarus and freed them. In gratitude for their freedom, these elder Cyclopes forged the most powerful weapons in the cosmos. For Zeus, they crafted the thunderbolts. For Poseidon, the trident that could shake the earth. And for Hades, the helm of invisibility. It was with these very weapons that the Olympians won the war. The first Cyclopes were not enemies of the gods. They were the architects of their victory. The second generation of Cyclopes continued this legacy of craftsmanship, though in a lesser role. These were the Sicilian Cyclopes, a tribe that lived and worked in the volcanic heart of Mount Etna. They were no longer independent masters, but now served as the powerful assistants to the Olympian god of the forge, Hephaestus. While Hephaestus was the genius, the designer, the Cyclopes were the raw, brute force of the divine forge. They were the ones who worked the great bellows, who lifted the massive hammers, and who could withstand the impossible heat of a volcano. They helped Hephaestus craft some of his most famous creations, and the constant hammering from within the mountain was said to be the cause of Etna's eruptions. While this generation was not as primordial or as powerful as the first, they still maintained the Cyclopean identity as master smiths, as creators, not destroyers. They were still respected, if feared, members of the divine industrial complex. A far cry from the savage brutes they would later become in the popular imagination. So what happened? How did a race of god-tier smiths devolve into cannibalistic monsters? This brings us to the third and most famous tribe, the Homeric Cyclopes, a race of lawless, savage shepherds living on a remote island. These Cyclopes had no laws, no society, no respect for the gods, and no understanding of Xenia, the sacred Greek law of hospitality. The most famous of them was Polyphemus, a son of Poseidon. When Odysseus and his men took shelter in his cave, Polyphemus did not see them as guests. He saw them as food. He trapped them and day by day began to brutally devour them, smashing their heads against the rocks and eating them raw. This version of the Cyclops is a complete inversion of his ancestors. The elder Cyclopes built the tools of civilization for the gods. Polyphemus lives in a cave and eats the men who represent that civilization. He is a symbol of a race's tragic fall from grace, a devolution from creator to a mindless, destructive consumer. The story of Polyphemus ends with a classic hero's mistake: hubris. After successfully blinding the giant with a sharpened, burning stake and escaping with his remaining crew under the bellies of sheep, Odysseus could not resist the urge to gloat. As his ship sailed away, he foolishly shouted his real name back to the blinded, raging giant. This was a catastrophic error. Polyphemus, now knowing his attacker's name, climbed to the top of his island and prayed to his powerful father, Poseidon, for vengeance. He cursed Odysseus to wander the seas for 10 long years, to lose all his companions, and to return home to find his house in turmoil. Poseidon heard his son's prayer, and the rest of the Odyssey is the story of that terrible curse being fulfilled. The encounter with Polyphemus was not just another monster battle. It was the inciting incident for the entire second half of the epic. A grim reminder that even when you defeat a monster, mocking a god's son will have devastating consequences that will follow you across the world. So, the story is told. The Cyclops was not one type of monster. They were a diverse race with a long and tragic history. From primordial godsmiths who armed the Olympians and literally forged their victory to master craftsmen serving a new divine order, and finally to a tribe of degenerate, savage outcasts who had forgotten their noble heritage. The story of Polyphemus is so powerful not because he was a generic monster, but because he was the final, degraded chapter of a once great story. He is a symbol of how a mighty lineage can fall into savagery, how creation can give way to consumption. It is a profound and sorrowful story about the entropy of power, a reminder that even for the children of gods, the journey from being a creator to becoming a monster can be a short and tragic one. So, which tribe of Cyclopes do you find more compelling? The god-tier blacksmiths who who armed Zeus, or the terrifying cannibal that Odysseus faced? Let us know your thoughts.